Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I serve as the NXUnite lead here at Nexus Marketing and will be your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is all things auction and event fundraisers, tips and tricks for nonprofits. And as usual, before I introduce our panelists and we jump in, I do have a few quick logistics to cover. NXUnite is made in partnership with Nexus Marketing and serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cause-driven podcasts. NXUnite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So if you are joining us live, please feel free to start submitting your questions starting right now, and we'll dedicate the second part of the panel to addressing as many as we possibly can. You can put those questions directly in the chat, but I probably recommend putting it in the questions tab just to kind of help so it doesn't get lost. So again, start submitting those questions now, submit them throughout the entire session, and we'll use the second half to address as many as we can. All right, if at any point you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, my team member Malou is here under the Team NXUnite username and will do her best to assist. So give a little holler in the chat, let us know what's happening, and we'll try to figure out how to get you back on and enjoying the session as quickly as possible. I did also want to mention that this panel session is being recorded. So if you get to the end and the insight you heard is just so fantastic, you need to hear it a second time right away. That's awesome news. It's going to automatically be in your email inbox at the end of the session. So give it a few minutes after we wrap up and you'll have access to that recording. It will also continue to be accessible on the NXUnite website in the on-demand panel sections. So if you have any friends in the industry who are like, can't believe they missed it, they needed to be there, feel free to share that same registration page that you used to sign up, and they'll be able to access the recording. All right, finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to give a big thank you to our audience, whether you are in the chat here with us live saying where you're from and what the weather is, or you're watching the recording a day from now, a week from now. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. And if you are joining us live, I hope you will submit those questions so we can address the topics relevant to you and your team. To begin with the introductions, I'd first like to introduce AJ Steinberg, who's the founder of Queen Bee Fundraising. With over 20 years of experience as a nonprofit event producer and engagement strategist, AJ has worked on over 100 successful events and raised millions of dollars for organizations with her Los Angeles-based production company. In 2015, AJ launched Queen Bee Fundraising to share the art of nonprofit event planning, sponsorship acquisition, and engagement strategies with organizations worldwide. So glad to have you on this panel, AJ.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Also joining us today is Cody Hayes. Cody is the CEO and founder of Marketing Mission, a digital marketing firm that helps nonprofit organizations use marketing tools and resources to advance progressive social change. With over 7 years of nonprofit experience, Cody's happiest days are spent behind his computer screen, helping other nonprofits change the world. He helps organizations grow their impact through creative, data-driven digital marketing. Glad to have you on another panel, Cody.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone.
Also joining us is Laurie Hochman. Laurie serves as the marketing director at Auctria. She has a passion for helping groups exceed their fundraising goals. After using Auctria for many auction fundraisers, she joined the team to help others boost their auction fundraising for many wonderful causes. Auctria has been utilized in over 45,000 event fundraisers, raising over $500 million. So glad you could be here today, Laurie.
It's my pleasure. Can't wait to hear all the good questions out there.
Yay. And finally here with us today is Sherry Truhlar, who is the president of Red Apple Auctions, a boutique auction firm focused on nonprofit galas. Since leaving her corporate marketing job, she's worked as a cheeky auctioneer on stage and a trusted resource off stage for anyone seeking to improve the profitability of a fundraising gala. Though her public work has taken her to nearly every state and placed her alongside A-list celebrities, most days she is educating gala planners via her Benefit Auction Ideas series. So glad you could be here, Sherry. Oh, you're muted.
I was being muted. I was being good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sherry. All right. It is finally time to jump in and have me stop talking. So AJ, I'm going to have you start us off with our first question. How do you recommend setting clear objectives for fundraising events and auctions? And how does this impact the overall success of the event?
Oh, well, Colleen, that's a really good question. And I'm not sure I'm the perfect person for that question, but I'll tell you what. Your auction is one part of your larger event. So when you're going to be setting your goals for your auction, you need to look at your auction event as a whole and see what you're trying to accomplish with it. Set your goals. There's 5 goals for any event. There's, of course, fundraising, but there's also marketing your organization, which is a part of an event. There's also promoting your missions, which is a part of the event. There's a call to action, which is a part of the event. How are you going to make them stay with you? And there's also the appreciation element, meaning thanking them for their time. To really get your auction in line with your event, you need to sit down. If this is a event that's already happened, you need to sit down and do a post-event strategic audit to see what went right and wrong with your event and see how your auction fit in with that. And I think that's going to be the answer that I say to a lot of things is you need to really do assessments on what's working and not working for you, and then implement those changes next year. Because a lot of times, and I know Laurie and Sherry and Cody probably see this too, is after the event, everyone's very gung-ho to fix it. And then they go on their merry ways and don't get together for another 6 months and they've forgotten everything. You need to really assess what works, do a strategic event audit, and then implement it over the next months until the next event.
Thank you so much, AJ. Appreciate you starting us off. Cody, over to you. Any recommendations for setting clear objectives for our events, and how does this impact the overall success?
Absolutely. So I think when we are setting objectives, we obviously want to have our end goal in mind. So understanding, how much do we want to raise in this event? How many people do we need to make that happen? What's the average gift amount based on our past event data? So really understanding the data and kind of setting your goals and reverse engineering and to understand what steps you'll need to take in order to get there. Because if we can get clear on our objectives with that end goal in mind, then again, we can reverse engineer, set our steps to ensure that the event is purpose-driven, it's focused, and ultimately successful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cody. Before we move to our other 2 panelists, I do want to let our audience know that we have had a poll go live where we've asked you all, did your last event have clear objectives set before? So if you would like to share, obviously no pressure, that poll is there. Sherry, over to you. Any recommendations for setting clear objectives and the impact that overall has on the event?
I love what everybody has already stated, from the fact that you can pull a lot of different metrics. I've never heard what AJ said, though, about the 5 core areas for having a focus. I will share that, you can look at the average gift amount, as Cody said. You can look at how many people come, how many people of that percentage give, not just come, but how many give. What is the average gift amount? How are your live auction or silent auction items selling in proportion to what the value is? All of that can be important. However, just last week, I was having a conversation with a client, and years ago, when I went to get my CMP, which I no longer kept at, but when I went to get it, one of the first things that we had as far as part of our classwork was, what is the primary purpose of this event? So last week, we're having a client meeting. I said, well, what's the primary purpose of this event? Because it's a new client to me. And both of the chairs kind of sat back and they said, well, to us, it's fundraising. But to the people coming, if they don't have a good time, they will not come back. So it really is this balance between a social event and a fundraising event. So I will just share briefly with your audience what I shared with them. The reality is that when I kind of look at an auction gala, there's various core components that you need to make that gala work. The hardest one of those to change is the audience. It's easy to change processes. It's easy to change items, but boy, people are hard to change. So if your goal is around people, start working on that one first, meaning that, are you getting people there who have some disposable income and who are committed to the cause? And even if they're not committed to the cause, how are we going to structure the event to get them committed for that night? Meaning that, what am I going to do on stage, or what are we going to plan in the event that gets them to give something? And then at that point, I figure that's what I'm turning over to the development director, and it's their job to court them. It's their job to get them on the newsletter. It's their job to bring them in for a tour. It's their job to figure out if they should be a major donor. So kind of wrapping all of that up, and I'm kind of feel like I'm floating around a bit there, but that's really what I'd say is there's lots of different metrics you can choose. But if it comes down anything around people, I would say work on that first, because that's usually the longest cycle, and it's going to take some phone calls. It's going to take some invitations. It's going to take some scripts in order to get people invited, but that's going to be for most groups starting out, that's going to be the core one.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, Laurie, over to you. Thoughts on setting those clear objectives and how it impacts success?
I concur with all the panelists, and I kind of break it down pretty similar. Your event fundraiser has two purposes, one to raise awareness and one to raise money. So those are your core overall objectives. And then I kind of break it down into smaller objectives. What are your objectives? How many sponsors do you need? How much money do you want to cover for that? How many tickets do you want to sell? How many seats are in the room? Can we fill all of those seats? So I break it down into smaller chunks, and I break that down probably because there's different committee members that are working on those. Although there may be a committee leader, there's probably somebody that loves to go out and ask for auction items, but don't you dare ask them to draft up a flyer. So, kind of setting up some objectives for the people that are working on the team so that it matches with what they're working on. And then collectively, you'll find some success.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. Checking in on that poll, again, we asked you all, did your last event have clear objectives set before the event? 38% of you said, yes, we had well-defined objectives. That's amazing. 38% of you said somewhat, but they could have been clearer. And the math is not going to add up because we have people still voting, just a warning. 11% said, no, we didn't establish clear objectives. And another 11% said, we just haven't had an event for a while. So we are across the board, which is just good to know as we're going into these next questions. Thank you all so much for filling that out. All right, Sherry, I'm going to have you start us off with our next one. Considering the unique supporter base of each nonprofit, how can fundraising events and auctions be tailored to meet the specific needs and interests of the audience?
Okay, I have an Oregonian client, and I like to joke with her that she has the Bernie Sanders approach to fundraising, because she very much would rather get $1 from 1 million people than get $1 million from one person. So if that, and that's just what she's trying to do right now. So if that is your approach, you're going to take the approach of smaller items. You're going to have the wine pull. You're going to raise money through a raffle. You're going to look for games. The silent auction is going to be more of a focus for you, even though it's a lot more work and so forth, because that's how you're going to get a little bit from a lot of different people. Raffle tickets, for instance, might be something. You'll start your paddle raise at $1,000 and not $5,000 or $10,000, that sort of thing. So if you are, depending on your unique supporter base, is going to reflect. You might still have a live auction. The things you sell are different. You still have an appeal. The levels that you start at are going to be different.
Thank you, Sherry. All right, Laurie, over to you. How can we make sure our events are tailored to the needs of our audience?
Big time ditto on what Sherry just said. What will make the people in your room open their wallet, hand you their credit card? Some people love a raffle. They'll peel off cash for any sort of game. And then some people, not in a million years am I going to take a chance. I want something for what I am paying for. And then other people like, no, I want you to have all the dollars and I want you to spend it the way you want. So you got to kind of know your audience and how they will contribute and find an opportunity to support you. That being said, it doesn't mean that you can't have multiples of those in the same event, because there may be little smaller audiences that will want to do one and not the other. But don't go crazy. Now, how do you find that balance? That's a hard thing. You try something one year. If it works, you try it again the next year. And if it does well, you do more of that. But these events grow from year to year. maybe they start off at, just, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 the first year, and then it grows and it grows and they snowball. So when you look at somebody's event and you're like, oh my God, they're doing, 1.1 million. How can we do that? We're only making 50,000. It's okay. They probably weren't making the 1.1 the first time they started. So you're using your knowledge and you're growing it from year to year. So it's really important that you evaluate, like AJ was talking about, evaluate after what worked and then move forward from there. And then different events attract different people also. So who came to the one that we did at the bowling alley versus who came to the one that we did at the gala party? And did they overlap? Did they not overlap? And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't just do one or the other, because now you're getting two separate audiences. Events can take on so many different shapes and sizes.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, testing.
Laurie, we'll give you a moment. We'll have you jump back in at the end if there's anything else you want to add. Stay safe. Don't know what that was. All right, moving over to AJ. How are we tailoring our events to the unique needs of our audience?
That should be first and foremost in the mind of anybody who's creating an event at any time in history. You cannot please everybody all the time. And this is going to play into that whole millennial shift, the whole generational bridge, cliff that's coming up. Events should be specifically tailored to the group that you want to have there. Meaning, if you want to sell tickets, Cody can come and do an awesome job with his marketing. But quite honestly, and Sherry can do a great job with being on stage, and Laurie can do a great job with her platform. But the thing is that if you don't build an event that appeals to the people you want to see there, you will not sell tickets. And an example of that is I worked with an international reef organization that was citizen science. People who scuba dived and who did reef diving, they would go out and they would do science to help save the reefs. International, great. Well, they decided to do a black tie dinner in the aquarium. I was brought in for this. Let's just put it this way. These are not a group of people who really want to get in black tie at all on a Saturday, and they don't want to sit and eat fish in front of fish that have been plundered from the reef. So let's just say you really need to craft your events carefully. You cannot please everybody all the time. So I'm a big fan of, if you have differing donor bases, have 2 events. Don't ditch the black tie gala, because to me, that's your high net worth individual. That's the high five for people who are the legacy supporters. But let's build an event that has a lower input, lower buy-in, maybe $50 or $100. That's more fun, outdoors, food trucks, music, beer garden, and build it so that younger people can afford to come and they want to come. And that's when you start building affinity, so that by the time that they are higher up and have deeper pockets and older, they will be the ones going to your galas.
Thank you, AJ. All right, Cody, any final thoughts on making sure our events are matching up with our audience?
Yes. So I'm actually going to take this from a branding standpoint. As Colleen, I am a big fan of a theme for your event. And so I say that to say, when your events for visual design, like the pamphlet, the visuals on the screen in the room, even your marketing materials, when that doesn't reflect the value of your organization, you're going to end up leaving money on the table. And that's obviously not what we want for an event like this. And so with a beautiful brand or a theme for your event that is actually representing the value of your impact, you're going to stand out from other events that are competing for donor attention, right? And so how do we do this to tailor specifically? How do we tailor a theme specifically to our audience? So we want to think about starting with audience research. So this is through like figuring out what people are interested in. If it was the reef organization, like you just mentioned, and we may want to do that research of like, what do they like to eat? Or what are they passionate about? Or, kind of figure out what is that, that through line that connects folks and gets them riled up in a good way. And then we can translate that into visual branding. So creating this cohesive visual design for the visuals on screen, for the table setting, and even the color of the lights that are shining in the room that you're in. And that's where we're going to start to make folks feel like, oh, yeah, I've been kind of hit with this consistent feel. I can start to trust these folks, and that's what we want. We want there to be trust and an emotional connection. And then finally, I would say don't underestimate the power of multi-sensory engagement. So things like music, videos, more to break up the awkward silence that sometimes happens at events. Don't be afraid to use visuals, auditory, smells with a delicious food, hopefully not fish, for the wreath organization.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cody. Very quickly, I want to jump in and encourage our audience to start submitting those questions. If there's a topic you were particularly hoping we would address, you have any follow-up questions for any of our panelists, you have just a question that you feel like might be a good fit for this group, please feel free to start submitting them. I see that we've already had a few come in, but the more we get in, the earlier they come in, the more likely we'll be able to address a larger number of questions. So if there's something in the back of your mind, submit that question now. All right, Cody, I'm actually going to stick with you for this next question. Many nonprofits have expressed in past panels that they're worried about audience engagement with fundraising events and auctions, both before the event, getting people to actually sign up and buy tickets, as well as during the event. What practical advice can you offer to ensure active participation and successful outcomes?
Absolutely. So for a little bit of historical context, I really dove headfirst into the wonderful world of our pandemic events in 2020, where we treated these events less as information and more as entertainment. We were crafting a 30 to 90 minute story that kind of went through a problem and had a guide, the organization kind of showing how they uplift their constituents and the folks that they serve, and then stories of success sprinkled throughout and things like that. And so when we are thinking about how can we engage our audience during an event, I'm thinking interactive elements. So are there activities? Are there polls? Or is there a stand up if moment? Something where we can really get our audience to tune back in for a second, and then carry on with that conversation, that storytelling. We also want to incorporate real-time updates on those donation trackers, right? So if we kick off and say, hey, our goal tonight is $100,000, and within 15 minutes, we want to say, all right, we are almost we're 25% there, and getting folks on this feeling of momentum. Oh, we're carrying momentum, we're building it, to keep them kind of on the edge of their seats. What's that thermometer update looking like? And then also when it comes to content and how to keep your audience engaged from the point of sign up to the actual event, that's where we can drip some little sneak peeks of what's to come. So if you know that you have, you're telling 3 great stories and have client interviews that you're sharing during your event, let's take a little snippet of that story and let's drip that out to folks who have signed up, but it's not time for the event yet. So we're going to send them a little sneak peek, a little personal note that says, hey, this is just a bit of what you can expect. We're going to dive in. You can hear from this person directly at the event on X date. So I'll wrap up there.
Thank you so much, Cody. Appreciate you starting us off with that question. Sherry, I'm going to go over to you. If we're really thinking about active participation and for a successful outcome, how can we engage our audience?
Okay, there can be activities that cost money, meaning that you're going to make some money from them or at least cover your cost. And then there's activities that you don't have to have necessarily a cost to that. So if you're looking at low-level costs, those are your raffles, those are your games, those are your wine pulls and so forth. They have a broad appeal. But even like when I say games, one of my clients, like actually I've had two clients who were celebrating a big anniversary, and they had very cleverly put a display into the space whereby people would write down what the organization meant to them on any given date. Like, so there was an opportunity to provide feedback for what this group had done for their family member. And that's an activity that promotes engagement and may even solicit some testimonials that you can use later, but it's not a cost. It's just something that people can do. The same would be true where you've got, at the sports event that I did, and they're shooting those basketball hoops like you do at a carnival, right? So those, they can be cost driven, but they don't have to be. As far as activities that involve others at a high level, a live auction will target higher levels of giving as well as ideally an entertainment value. The paddle raise is really addressed for all levels of giving and also educates people on your mission. And then silent auctions, of course, are really popular as well. But boy, they tend to be time intensive and not always the best way to make some revenue. So if you've got capacity, sure, go ahead and try a silent auction. But I will tell you that for most groups that targets guests who want to contribute, that targets guests who want to contribute, but they like getting something when they contribute versus say the appeal, which you're just giving because you believe in the mission and want to support it. So just those kind of different levels.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Yeah. All right, AJ, over to you. How can we engage our audience at our events and auctions?
Okay, this is right in my wheelhouse. What Sherry said about your silent auction, I want you all to know that your silent auction does nothing to build affinity for your organization. It is merely shopping and entertainment. That's it is. And you make some money. But after about 35 to 50 items, people don't have the bandwidth to mentally really go through them all and bid. It ends up to be a time suck instead of people socializing and building relationships with your board and your staff. They're just running around bidding. Another thing is that during my cocktail hours, I try and do something that's interactive, that's meaningful to the organization. So if I'm working with a veterans organization, we'll actually have a table where they can write thank you notes to veterans or to children, anything that they can do that's interactive that actually brings meaning into the cocktail item time aside from it. Instead of spending hundreds of hours on your silent auction, as you do, spend the time putting thought into your paddle raise. That is the most meaningful moment in your event. That should be the high point of your event, and that should be the most money-making thing of your event. If you script it right and do it right and work with your auctioneers, super important to partner with your auctioneers like Sherry in advance to get them up to speed on your mission and what you want to do. Engagement is not boring people. Engagement is not 20 live auction items. And I'm sorry, Sherry, this is my thing, is that only about 5% of the people actually raise their paddle at a live auction. The rest are sitting there entertained for the first 3, and then they're getting pissed by the end if you've got more than like 7, in my opinion, because they can't participate. The rich people are participating and they're in the back just talking. So what you need to do is figure out, what is the attention span? I'd rather see you put the effort into an amazing paddle raise or fund a need so that you can build affinity for what you do, promote your mission, and you can really make your money where people are giving money for something meaningful. They're participating. That's mine.
Thank you so much, AJ. All right, Laurie, over to you. Thoughts on audience engagement? Ooh, you're muted, Laurie.
Oops, sorry about that. Hopefully it'll stay quiet here. I think the testing is complete on their fire system. So I guess we're all safe. That's the good thing, right? So there's a lot of different ways to go, and it's based on the organization. I think with engagement, I think silent auctions do have a place in this world, but it's with organizations that do want people to, shop. But that can happen outside of your main gala and event, not taking away from your big gala event and your big donors. So having a platform that can run that for you and keep it on the side and not take away from the rest of the stuff that's going on. I think engagement comes down to, like AJ and Cody and Sherry were talking about, is people being interested in clicking the button, watching the video, tasting the food, writing a letter. So how do you do that? You make it interesting in the people that you're hanging around with. If your little social circle is interested in that, or if your larger social circle. So ambassadors can be really key to grabbing additional people and saying, oh, I'm going to this event because, or I'm donating to this because, and telling their personal story as to why. Then it's like, oh, that means something to them, so that might mean something to me also. Or I didn't realize that, and now I know more about that organization, but I'm listening to them because there's somebody that I truly believe in. So I think ambassadorships, peer-to-peer type activities, it can really advance your amplification for your future engagement.
Thank you so much, Laurie. All right, very quickly, I want to let people know that we have had another poll go live. I know some of you have already found that, but we've asked you all, is a lack of engagement a concern for your events? So if you want to contribute your thoughts, go fill out that poll. It seems like right now, 57% of you, we're getting votes. Around 50% of you said somewhat, but we manage it. Around 40% of you said no, engagement is not a major issue. And about 6% of you said, yes, it's a significant concern. So once again, across the board. All right, I have two more questions before I'm moving us into those audience questions. And I've seen some really amazing audience questions have come in. So we're going to maybe do these in a little bit of a speed round, these final two questions of mine, panelists. So we're going to go a little fast so that we can get over to those audience questions. All right, Laurie, I'm going to have you start us off. How can nonprofits leverage pre- and post-event engagement strategies specifically for fundraising events and auctions? And are there specific tools or approaches that work effectively?
Okay, you have to tell people about your event way in advance. You're living it, you're breathing it. You think everybody else is doing the same thing. They're not. You cannot over communicate. I guarantee it. I'll talk to people. They're like, oh, well, we posted it on Facebook this week. We can't do it again. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's okay, because the flow of information is so fast that it's okay to post it multiple times. So however many times you're sharing it with people, at least 3x that is probably okay. So pre-engagement, get that information out there early. Use your event website as an ongoing lifeline to what's happening at your event. So when you open your event, don't just send people somewhere and say, oh, here's the information. Send them there where they can do something, where it's buy a ticket, buy a raffle ticket, buy a drink, make a donation, post a testimonial, where they're actually doing something, touching the keyboard and doing something. So that pre-engagement is just as important. Then you actually have your event, which is the bulk of what we're talking about. And then post-engagement, tell everybody what happened at the event and tell them multiple times also. Your dollars did this. We were able to feed this many people. We are able to shelter this many folks. We are able to, educate this many students, provide this much academic and enrichment resources, and go back and circle back with those people and let them know. Shout it from the rooftops as loud as you can.
Thank you so much, Laurie. All right, Cody, over to you. How can we leverage pre- and post-event engagement strategies for our events?
Wonderful. So I am going to focus on post-event with a little hidden secret. The best time to ask someone to become a monthly donor is actually within 60 days of them making a gift at your event. So let's talk about how we can do that. I recommend an automated email sequence, something that you can set up once and just let it run on autopilot. And that sequence I call it like a event donor welcome sequence that educates new donors about the impact. We say, thank you for attending, maybe throw in a survey, but then we're transitioning them into how donations are sustaining the organization, kind of shifting over to long-term commitment language. And so we can, within those emails, you want to think about what information from the event for what data from the event you can use to personalize the ask. So for example, if you are able to pull into your MailChimp or Constant Contact or Flowdesk, whatever tool you're using, their name, obviously, maybe even their gift amount, things like, like those main two, being able to customize those emails so it feels a little bit more tailored towards them would be ideal. So that is my recommendation, is don't just leave your event. Think of it as you're carrying them and nurturing them onto becoming a monthly sustainer.
Thank you so much, Cody. All right, AJ, how can we leverage our pre-event and post-event engagement strategies?
Well, I think Cody has hit it on the head with I have my clients, and you know what, I'm going to do this. I just put this in the chat. So I have a post-event strategy. Pre-event is you have to be a cheerleader for your event. There is no other way around it. If you are not enthused and excited about your event and convey that to your board, who are supposed to be the mouthpieces for your marketing, your committee, who are the mouthpieces for the marketing of your event, for your sponsors to keep them engaged before and give them updates, let them know how awesome it's going to be. That is going to be the best marketing for your event and to get other people excited about attending. Now, in the chat, I have a 3-step, super easy post-event protocol that I use with my clients. It'll tell you, like, 2 days after the event, do this. 6 days after the event, do this. 2 weeks after the event, do this. This is what you send. I will email it to you. It's not a big deal. But but it's one of those things that if you follow it and if you put it in place before the actual event and it's ready to go, it will go out. You're going to be so busy after event. It's not like, the event's over. I'm going to go home and put on my fuzzy slippers and have my glass of wine, take a vacation. No way. It is what I call the thank you week. The thank you week is the week after your gala. That is when you're doing all your post-event thank yous, closing out your cashiering and everything. So your post-event outreach is the most important thing to turning guests into donors. You are putting the hard work in and they fell in love with you for the 4 hours at your gala and they know about what you do. It's up to you to keep in touch with them and to keep that love flowing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, AJ. All right, Sherry, any final thoughts on that pre and post-event engagement?
I only want to talk about the post-event, and I've got 2 ideas. There's this old adage that money loves speed. That's what we talk about in the business world, so I'll apply it here. From the standpoint of thanking donors immediately. 2 examples. Text them in the ballroom when they've bought something or donated something big. We started to see that. I had a client up in Boston who started doing that during the virtual events. As people were bidding and buying, she was texting them to thank them. The next one is have a board member call them the very next day. It'll go straight into voicemail, and that's fine. But that board member just needs to say, hey, I was there last night. I saw what you did. This is such an important cause. Glad to see you there supporting us. Thank you. Click. Done. So thanking, again, money loves speed. So send it fast. When they give the money, send it fast. That's all.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, I am going to have us move into our audience questions just because we're getting so many wonderful ones. If any of our panelists had our hearts set on that final question that you had received in advance, send me a little message and I'll make sure to ask it to you. But AJ, I'm going to move over to you. We've had a question come in asking, what trends are you seeing for unique and fun events that could replace a gala event?
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's all over the place. It depends on who your target audience is. If a lot of these small events for high net worth donors where you have 30 people for dinner in a home, a small concert in a house is super popular and very effective. It's kind of following a little bit the Benavon model, which anybody knows that was a big thing. I see for younger people, comedy nights are very big. I've seen bingo nights, which I'm not a bingo fan, but this really works. Anytime that you can get people, lots of beer tasting and wine tasting, wine and jazz, all of those things that if you look and see what people are going to in your area, you can replicate that as an event. And also it's a great way to partner with wineries. If you want to get involved with wineries, go to the wine tasting room, have your event there. It's an awesome way to start building relationships, because relationships aren't just with your guests. You're building relationships with your sponsors that are really going to carry through in years to come as you say, hey, I've got this great opportunity for you with an event I'm doing. Let's partner with it because I can send you a lot of clients. Your idea with your sponsors is you're going to be showing them and proving to them that you can send them boots on the ground clients and customers. So that's sort of the trend I see is do something fun, look around and see what trivia nights, whatever people are doing, you look in your newspaper, how can you take that and make that a popular, less heavy lift event for younger people? Because that's what they're looking for is younger people to get affinity with the organization.
Great. Thank you so much, AJ. I'm not going to have every panelist answer every question, but I do want to open this up. Does anyone else want to jump in here?
I'm going to throw a link in the chat here. I do have some unique events that we have through Auctria. People have done all sorts of tournaments, chili cook-offs, things like that. That way you can take a sneak peek at them. And I also have a listing of all our current events that are currently going on. And it's a great place to get some inspiration. So if it's okay, I can drop those links. Is that okay with you, Colleen?
Yep, sounds good. Thank you so much, Laurie. All right, anyone else want to comment on events to replace galas? All right, in that case, we're going to...
I will say one thing, and maybe this is not new, but it might be new to someone, is anything food related. So I've got 2 or 3 clients that do these chef events. A bunch of restaurants come in, they wander around, they have a scallop from here and the salad from here. And at some point they sit down and usually have an appeal at the least, sometimes a live auction and an appeal. So from that standpoint, those are, they're not formal sit down affairs, but you're getting some really great food, getting some top restaurants involved. So that's one concept that seems to be pretty popular.
Thank you, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to our next question. Cody, I'm going to have you start us off. Someone talked about in the chat that their mission is hard. They serve children who have been abused, and they're struggling with the kind of the activity and the engagement in a way that isn't just like a total downer, but also is respecting their mission. Any thoughts on, I'm wondering about like the branding of an event, marketing of an event, or engagement at the actual event?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we are talking and talking about heavy topics that are kind of make people uncomfortable, we want to remember that a story has an ending. So we don't want to just bring up a problem, trauma dump, and then just walk away. We need to have a resolution. And so that's where storytelling comes in handy. So we can, if we are going to tell a story that has some sort of conflict or problem in it, then we need to go through and find a solution and talk about, hey, this is what happened on the other side. This person is not defined by what happened to them. They're defined by the options that they now have. And so think about that piece in the sense of completing your story loop. Another thing that is important or something that you can consider is if you are telling a story, maybe you're not the right person to tell that story. Maybe we need to ask someone from the community to tell that story, compensate them for that story, and really go about it in a trauma-informed way. I think every event is different. Every situation is different. And so if that's something where you are nervous or just uncertain, lean on consultants, lean on people who are DEI specialists for nonprofits, for events, who can say, let's look at this. We know you're well-intentioned. Let's create this event or this activity that feels good for not just you as the fundraiser, but the person that's sitting in that room.
Thank you so much, Cody. Anyone else want to add to this question? AJ?
Yeah, actually, go ahead. Was she going to talk? Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to put, because I just did something for pregnant teens who were pregnant through sex trafficking. So it was just like one of those completely intensely traumatic thing. And a lot of it is, if it's a gala, what you're going to be doing is the people there are the heroes. That's part of the story. And once again, we could have this really long-winded, Cody, I totally get, there is a problem with the white savior complex, and that is an issue that we think. But the problem that and Cody, this is something that I'm again, I totally get this. I went through, and when I'm pulling pictures for my marketing, everybody's old and white in all of my gala pictures. Really, that is just for 20 years. And I really am pushing back on that, because there's some great people in the industry who are of color. And that's it. If you want DEI, you need to have it represented on stage. And you need to really look at, if you have no pictures of people who are in your audience, who are of color or of a certain age or have special needs, you got to start cultivating that. I mean, and that's, so trauma informed is if everybody's sitting there going, but the one thing, Cody, that I really struggle is, you know what? The people sitting in my event on Saturday, I will tell you, they love the white savior complex. What do I do? This is a real issue I have. I can't change it in 1 year or in one event. It's going to be that, it's just an issue. And I mean, anybody here in the panel who has an answer to that, I would love to hear it. I just, one person said you need to do it individually. You can't, it has to be organic. You have to bring in people of color into your organization staff. Then you have to have, people of color come in on your committees and then on your board. And then that's organically building it. But I think sorry, I kind of just went away from that, but there's a lot to unpack with that.
Sherry, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, a domestic violence shelter, one of the things that they would do is they held their event during domestic violence month, whatever month that is, I don't recall. But at their event, they would have cutouts of women. And so you're just seeing a silhouette. And on each silhouette, then you could go up and read more detail about what happened to that woman. It's not a happy story, so don't get me wrong. It's not all roses, but at any rate, you see what happened to that woman, and therefore it's kind of telling the story. But nobody is necessarily up front telling all of those stories. But then I like the idea then of weaving that into, you can change this, so we don't have all of these 40 different silhouettes out here. We don't need to have any of them out there if we're doing our job by, doing the programs, getting involved, contributing in the ways that the domestic violence shelter was making an impact in the community. So that can be something too, is it doesn't have to actually be faces. It can be silhouettes.
Thank you, Sherry.
I can pull up a photo too, or maybe, you know what, maybe I can throw it over here in the chat. I'll see what I can do if I can attach something here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sherry. Laurie, can I have you start us off with our next question?
Sure.
We had a question come in about what trends we're seeing for ticket pricing. In particular, this person mentioned that they have a committee meeting tonight and they worry it's going to be like pulling teeth to ask for a price increase for their gala.
That's probably more of an AJ question. But how much is that chicken dinner going to cost in the first place has to be your absolute baseline. You can't go below that. But there are some ways to talk about pricing. For, are you going to include a couple raffle tickets? Are you going to include some VIP? Are you going to include some experiences? And the pricing doesn't just have to be flat. I need to cover my chicken price. How are you going to give something that's a little more value, early access to a keynote speaker, maybe a VIP room afterwards, or you know, at a future date. There's a lot of ways to incorporate into the ticket price other than just the basic math. I threw the link in there for some. There's hundreds of events that are currently going on, and you can take a sneak peek what everybody else is doing. Obviously, you don't know what their costs are going to be, but you can get an idea. And it really does vary. If you're doing something black tie, then people are going to expect that to be hundreds of dollars. If you're doing something that's you know, at the school, at the carnival, then it's probably much smaller. So it's kind of a hard question to answer without asking a lot more questions back.
Thank you, Laurie. AJ, did you want to jump in here in terms of trends for ticket prices?
Do not, under any circumstance, build an event that your support base can't afford. That is the first thing. Do not just jump to a gala as an event. That is so many times I'm brought in to do gala. I've talked more organizations out of galas than I've actually put in galas, because when you it's not just how much does a chicken cost. There is going to be a cost to a gala, no matter what. I mean, my galas here are like $100,000 plus for a gala. So you have to say, build it backwards, back into it. Is like, what can my constituents afford? All right. If they can only afford $100 ticket, what can you build for $100? Meaning, can we do an outdoor event with food trucks and a local band? Or can we do something in our own facilities where we have, you know, put tables out? Build it so that you can afford to offer tickets at the price that your followers and your supporters can afford. That is my biggest thing, because there's nothing more stressful and there's nothing more discouraging to the people who support you than knowing that they're not welcome at your event. So, you know, got to remember that.
Thank you, AJ. Anyone else want to jump in here on tickets?
I have a kind of tied into this as well, because a couple of years ago, in fact, Bridget is on this call, and she was one of the people in the panel that I had, that we were talking about our auctions elitist. And this gets a little bit into AJ, and she's talking about, you know, diversity and so forth as well. So we were talking about what's going to happen with school auctions. Are they going to go away? They're too elitist. But tied to this point about ticket sales, what I have seen is I now have more than one client who are doing different structures of tickets. So they'll have a solidarity ticket, which is like $40, and you can sign up for that if you want. It's at a loss. Then they have general admission, which might be $150, and then generous, you know, the generous level at $300, which is kind of your VIP level, and you get extra stuff for that. So I am starting to make them more inclusive. I'm starting to see ticket pricing shift in that way.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, we are actually getting to the end of our hour, so I am going to have us start wrapping up. That said, we had so many amazing questions come in, and I wish we could have addressed them all, but we're going to just need to do a part 2 to this session. That said, if you do have a particular question, I want to make sure you get it answered. Maybe you submitted it in the questions tab and we didn't get to it. Maybe you just have it in your head. It's a little bit of a personal one to you. I want to make sure you get that question answered. So we have just dropped a survey in the chat where you can let us know if you have a particular panelist you're hoping is going to reach out to you so you can ask your question. So if there's something lingering, fill out that survey, let us know so we can make sure to connect you to the person who can answer the question. All right, I have my final question for all of the panelists. And Cody, I'm going to have you start us off. What do you see as the future of auctions and fundraising events for nonprofits, and how can we get ahead today?
I think there is a lot of power in where technology is going right now. The setup times for these processes and for your like digital online auction components are becoming faster. Thank you, AI. And so we could really invest in those digital platforms that are allowing for not just in-person participation, but virtual participation as well. If we're talking about, we mentioned a few times, barrier to entry, and a virtual option for your in-person gala is a wonderful way to do that. And so lean into tech and really lean into your data as well.
Thank you so much, Cody. Laurie, over to you. What do you see as the future of auctions and fundraising events, and how can we go ahead today? Oh, never mind, we'll move away from you. All right, Sherry. Sherry, what are your thoughts on the future of auctions and how can nonprofits get ahead today?
All right. Well, AJ mentioned earlier possibly doing 2 different events. So again, I mentioned about the fact that we'd had this panel, we were talking about our auctions to elitist and what do we do to change that. So one thing I have seen is some groups have started to have 2 functions a year, what AJ was kind of talking about there. So maybe they have a carnival, not so fundraising focused, more community driven, more volunteer, thank you, appreciation sort of concept. And then they have their gala. So that might be something to think about too. Again, I don't know if it's a true trend, but now I'm seeing it. And then I already mentioned about the ticket pricing strategies. We'll see where that actually goes as far as being held upon being adopted by a wider group. But that might be some of the things too. That's all. Maybe Laurie's ready.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Laurie, are you ready or not yet?
I think so. Let me get it in fast. Of course, I totally agree with everybody on this panel. I know I keep saying it, but I'm just like sitting here nodding my head. Yes, you have to have your online presence and you need to have the ability for people to find you easily. So having your online auction or your online event public for an extended period of time, but giving people, like I said, a reason to go there. And then you can use your Google grant ads that you have out there. Use those dollars that are out there on the table to promote your event fundraiser. There's lots of people that can out there and help you. I bet Cody, I bet you do that all the time with people. So using that, and make sure that everything is mobile friendly. And people that have been in the digital world have known this for a long time, but I'm still seeing people that are doing stuff and it's not mobile friendly. If it is not mobile friendly, you are in trouble because people are spending the majority of their time on their phones. So if you are picking up tech and you are using things that are, desktop related, make sure that they're very mobile friendly also. And then you want to be able to have those doors open 24 hours a day, and doing that with your online presence is one of the best ways to do it. That way, when they're interested in looking for the information, they can find it at a fingertip access.
Thank you so much, Laurie. All right, AJ, any final thoughts on the future of events for our nonprofits?
The future for events is that smart organizations will break their events up so that they are targeting specific demographics. You can keep your gala if you have it and you have high net worth donors. You should have a mid opt-in. I always say there should be 3 events, and you should also have the mid opt-in for the younger people, the older Gen Zs, the younger millennials, and it should appeal to them and what they like. And then always try and do, if possible, a free event that is really building community and affinity, whether it be trash pickup at, in your neighborhood, whatever it is. We need to have that start to the stewardship silo where we get everybody in so that we can grow with them.
Thank you, AJ. All right, with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a huge thank you to our panelists for taking time out of their day. I know if we were in person, there would be a round of applause. So just know I'm sharing that emotionally with you all today. I do also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you to all of you who joined us live, submitted questions, said hello in the chat. Thank you to those of you who have watched the recording, no matter when you've watched it. Really appreciate you being part of the NXUnite community. I hope you can take what we discussed today and support the amazing work that you're already doing. Keep your eye out on the NXUnite website and the NXUnite LinkedIn if you want to attend future sessions. We have tons of panels addressing topics relevant to the nonprofit world. Coming up, we have some on AI for nonprofits, if that's a topic you're interested in, donor retention, digital marketing, and more. So again, NXUnite website and NXUnite LinkedIn will be your friend for all that. With that, again, I want to give a final thank you to our panelists. I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.